Alright, so we're going to be talking about psychic types, dark types, ghost types, and normal types this recording. Uh, First things first, what's everybody thinking we should start on? I say personally with myself, we start with normal types just because. No, let's start with psychic types. I think that's the better. Everybody sound good about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. I can get behind that.
I can't.
Oh, yes, you
God
can.
damn it, Vilty. Of course, I'm here with Vilty,
Hi.
Lavix,
Yo!
Jordan,
Good morning, evening, or possibly afternoon.
Zarayu,
Hi.
Little David,
Solve!
and Kitsune.
Hello.
All right, there'll be some of the talkers with us today. All right, so psychic types in general, just a little basis about them first before we start getting to some of the more unknown things. Is psychic types most notorious for one thing, and that's the fact that they control the laws of reality, right? We can all agree on that. They control things like telekinesis. They can use their powers of the mind, psychic energy, their ability to affect the laws of the world. That's how they can control things like gravity. It's how they can control things. They can make things like trick room, things of that nature. They can do different things like that. So, understanding that kind of basic fundamental level of how psychic types at least fight, what are some other things you guys might think would be important for people to know about psychic types?
Probably their mental condition on when they use their abilities.
Yeah, I can
ability
see that.
is
Like,
generated.
yeah,
Where does
it's
it
well,
stem from?
like when a psychic type uses their ability, it's a lot in the same lines as it's a tool, right? It's not like they need to be in certain type of condition. It's not like they have to go and meditate for 13 hours before they feel that they're properly situated to be ahead and lift a rock 3 feet off the ground. But that being said, I mean, the mind is affected by a lot of things. It's kind of the reason why psychic types have the weaknesses they do. I mean, you got the three basic fears in psychic types themselves: fear of the dark, which would be dark types; fear of arachnophobia, different types of phobias when it comes to bugs, making bug type a weakness. Then, of course, you got fear of death and the unknown, which is ghost types, right? Of course, all the recordings from here on won't be including the 6th gen or fairy type, just because there's not quite enough information for that to come in, so you won't be hearing about fairy type affecting different Pokemon and Pokemon typings. So I mean that's a pretty decent explanation, at least to understanding that their mental condition really only is affected by their emotional condition when it comes to using their abilities, and even then we're talking about creatures like Alakazam. We're talking about creatures like Gardevoirs. They're creatures. They're pretty fucking strong with mental powers. It's a little bit of fear probably won't really get the best of them. Of course, when you start dealing with something that can walk through walls and do crazy shit like a Gengar or things like that, it kind of goes. So, you guys think there's any decent questions about psychic types that should be answered?
Uh, so you're always saying that generally the psychic Pokemon knows when it can do something and when it can't. It's not really a matter of teaching it, but how
True.
exactly does a psychic Pokemon exactly get strong enough to use an ability?
It's a lot. It's a lot like this. Okay, so psychic types. Most psychic types have an innate sense of what they can do. It's the strength of their mind. Their mind is highly perceptive, analytical. They can look inwards on themselves, on their mind, and they can tell what they're doing. I mean, look about the range of good psychic moves that are naturally learned by Pokemon that they just come about learning, and then look at the depth in which those moves actually work on other Pokemon. And so you can understand if you look at that and take it for what it is. You can move on to how do they actually get stronger to allow that? Well, that just comes with experience and aging. A psychic type can know what it can do, and so it can know what it can't do. And that means it also can know, all right, if only I had a bit more power, if I evolved once or twice, maybe I would be able to do things like that, you know? It's a lot like maturation to a point. It's got to get strong enough and it's got to mature enough in order to have enough psychic power to be able to do those type of moves. Same way a child can know he's not strong enough to lift weights, but knows if once he gets older, he'll probably be able to lift that. It's about the same scenario, honestly. All right. Anything else?
No.
All Yeah. Of course, that being said, feel like uh, feel like that's probably a decent enough explanation of psychic types. We'll probably come back to them once we get to the other typings. Once you start seeing the kind of the way they function. So let's go ahead and go to ghost types because we have our semi-resident expert on ghost types with us here, Lavix.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I bet you what's up. Yeah. All right, so the brief explanation about ghost types from my part, and then I'll let Lavix talk about at least some of the stuff he's picked up being a ghost type trainer himself. Ghost types, the way they kind of fight is they don't augment the laws of reality; they augment the reality itself. If you look at the way the world works as three parts of an equation, right? You got the base of which the equation works from, the numbers. You got the laws that cause those numbers to go about, so addition laws, subtraction laws. That's where the psychic types come in. And then you've got the outcome, which is, if 2 plus 2 equals 4, the outcome would be 4. And that's where ghost types draw their power and the reality created from the laws. Only they're able to augment that reality, which is how they're able to do such weird things like shadow sneak, walk through walls, levitate when they want to, be able to do a lot of crazy things that ghost types can do. I mean, in my D&D, ghost types can do crazy enough things as to, forming things that don't actually exist, but are kind of illusions, but still have physical properties. Kind of weird things like that. For example, a Gengar getting a top hat because he wanted to look dapper today. They could do those type of things. Primarily, they draw their energies from life force, which, if you look in Pokedex entries, you usually find a pretty commonly occurring theme, which is ghost types life force, and that's what they do. Look at the Ghastly, Haunter, and Gingo trio dating at the first ghost types to really ever form. As you could see them taking life force, see them doing different ways of getting life force, and of course them themselves are nothing more than constituted life force a second time. So that's where they get their energy to be able to augment the world, which is also kind of why, in all honesty, ghost types can also be quite fragile at times. And also why in, my world, you'll see a ghost Pokemon eating life force rather than just Pokepuffins. That's just a little augmentation that I believe should happen. So Lavix, what are some other things you think should be mentioned about ghost types so people might be a little bit in the know?
Well, the biggest part about ghost types is that the two things they need is emotions and willpower. Because what's a ghost? It's you had enough willpower to, cling to life. Probably because of your emotional bonds or whatever. That's why.
True.
That's why. When I learn more stuff about ghost types, you can learn to communicate with just emotions as opposed to words, which is a pretty good help in battles because then the opponent doesn't know what you're saying.
Yeah, which is of course something a very big difference in Poke D&D versus just regular the game Pokemon battles is. You can hear your opponent shouting what to do, and well, if you hear your opponent say dig, you can expect a dig coming. So, talking with your emotions, it's a pretty decent way of keeping things on the hush-hush down low, yo. Word to your mother. Any question you guys have ever had about ghost types that you want answered or things of that nature?
Nope.
I'll take that.
I would ask a question, actually.
What?
Why is it, right, that when you look at a ghost type, you look at it as a more like a being of. It's something that would rather trick you than be malevolent towards you. In most cases, a pure ghost type and not like a ghost dark type. Why would it be they would want to trick and not to be malevolent?
Oh, that's more along the lines of personalities. That person was alive. You look at a ghost Pokemon, and you take the assumption that at one point they were alive as something else once before. Just a little bit of proof on the example is a pretty decently backed theory about how Ghastlies can come from Cloisters who died and lost their shell. Haunters is still up for discussion because where they're partially formed and partially ethereal, it's hard to tell really where their bodies could have been. And Gengars, of course, being the really decent theory of Gengars coming from, I think it's Clefairies?
Yeah, the shadow of a
Fable.
Clefairy.
The shadow of a Clefairy.
Fable, actually.
Yeah.
A Clefable, my apologies, from a Clefable. And so you take that and you go, okay, well, they were alive once and they died. And for some reason, they're now dead and they've came back to life. And so they're dead now. They really have nothing to do besides eat life force. And if a ghost really doesn't do anything, his life force isn't really going to leave, right? He's already reconstituted himself once. keeping himself as he is probably not a very hard thing to follow. I mean, just the truth. It's just a basic assumption you can really make. So when you're that bored, really, what do you have left to do? Trick people for entertainment. You have to get entertainment. You're essentially immortal. What do? You trick people. You trick humans, the people who come at you, and these people that want to catch you. Of course, you'd want to trick them. And so we might not view that as malevolent, but then you also got to think: is the ghost type meaning it as a harmful accident? Is he trying to be mean? Is he trying to actually just be an asshole to you? When you play a prank, you're trying to be mean, but you're not trying to be hurtful. You're doing it for your own entertainment, and you're really not paying attention to what the outcome of the person's going to be. Right, Lavix?
Yeah.
So that would kind of have to be my answer about it. They're really not giving a shit whether or not they're coming off as good or bad to you. They're just trying to get entertainment. Unless, of course, by that point you've tried to get a relationship with them, and at that point it's kind of like a friend pulling a prank on another friend. Just something friends do. All right.
Yeah, and the thing about being a ghost trainer is you'd have to be really good friends with Pokemon, because essentially they're entrusting the rest of their eternity with you. So, you have to keep them entertained, keep them happy, that kind of thing.
True. Because, Pokemon can run away. That is a fact. And Pokemon can turn on their trainers. I mean, there's nothing keeping them from it. All right. So, any other questions or things you guys think people should know about ghost types?
Now, a ghost type's altered reality, can it be broken?
Oh, of course it can be. Ghost types themselves, they're not all powerful. They can augment reality. They can augment the way the world looks. Like I said, they can trick you. They can cause you to think things are real that are not. It's a lot like take their augmentation of reality a lot like oh god, what's it called? The sight things that they got with the video gaming. What's it? Oh my god, Oculus
Virtual
Rift.
reality?
Yeah,
Oh,
Oculus
yeah.
Rift.
George, it sounded like such a what do you call it? With
What
the
do you call
pictures
that
on the
thing?
screen?
The kids are playing these days? No, the
Video
Oculus Rift.
games.
You're looking at, and these people are like, oh, it's so real. I mean, hell, there's examples of people in a complete setup to where all of their senses are taken over, and they'll like pull back their hands and shit like that when things come at them. Of course, it's not real, but it tricks your brain into it, and that's kind of the way ghost Pokemon augment reality to you. The reality hasn't really been augmented, but your perception of the reality has.
So rather than working off of sensation, they work off of perception.
Exactly. I mean, that's really all it is. It's all about your perception of them. That's why that's why a ghost type can be invisible or invisible to people. They work off of your perception.
I only asked because there have been cases of people dying in said augmented reality.
Ever hear about people dying in their sleep or things of that nature, or the thought that there's a pretty big theory about when you ever have a dream that you're falling, if you would actually ever hit the ground, you would have a heart attack and die. Because what was that?
Sorry, go ahead. No, it's fine.
Because it's a lot of the same thoughts. Your body in that moment believes you are actually falling. And so when you hit the ground, your body's expecting the damage, and you're going to have a heart attack. Your body can't handle it. A lot of the same reasons. I mean, it can kill you straight out. Now, there's been examples of ghost types taking actually appendages from people. That we've seen that in some of the more personal D&Ds that we play. Predominantly, Zerayo here lost a hand to a Banette. But
Okay, buddy.
Lavix lost a lot more than a hand.
well, he's lost a lot of things.
I'm still working to get it back.
That is
Damn.
true.
I mean, just to chip in on the point as well, I mean, it's probably somewhat relevant to what we're talking about here is, how ghosts can harm people if they're just, kind of tricking the senses and such. I mean, if you turn off the safety features, even a hollow bullet can kill Tom. Never forget.
That's a great Star Trek reference. I'd just like to say that right the fuck now. Make it so. Anyways, make it so number one. Anyway. Oh god.
Chakotay.
About 15 minutes of Star Trek, just quotes, and then maybe we'll be able to get back on topic.
Don't worry, I was invited here especially to bring people off topic.
That's true.
what I'm here to do. I don't actually have any knowledge about PokéD&D at all.
Exactly. Alright, so now the way I'd be able to explain how they can actually take appendages would have to be along these lines. So reality augments the way your body works, and it augments the way your body perceives itself. And so your perception of reality and the reality itself working together can cause certain specific things to occur. For example, your body believes it's lost its hand, but for some strange reason, you can still feel with that hand. That seems very odd, right? That doesn't feel like it should be. Well, there's no way you could feel with your hand and it be detached. So it has to still be attached. Well, then what could happen afterwards? Well, eventually your body just gives up. Well, it sees it, your hand's gone, your hand shouldn't be there, your brain makes the mental connection, it doesn't have a hand, cuts off the understanding. You don't feel your hand anymore. The power, of course, you also got to understand in this world, the power of the mind is a very powerful thing. I mean, look at psychic types. Entire being is their mind. And so, of course, they cut off the feeling to your hand, and now all of a sudden your hand's numb. At any point during that illusion and reality augmentation that you've been in, if an invisible ghost were to just come up and just take your goddamn hand and walk off with it, you wouldn't feel it. And I mean, then you've got bleeding, things of that nature that can occur. But you also got to look at this, right? And ghost Pokemon can learn a long line of types of moves. I mean, for example, a Gengar can learn Flamethrower, can't he? He can learn Lightning Bolt, he can learn Giga Drain, he can learn a lot of different moves with a lot of different typings. And ghost Pokemon value themselves as tricksters. I mean, the trickster ability is a pretty common one you can get in Ghost, at least in the ghosty ghost, pure ghost types. So it wouldn't be too absurd to think that a ghost type would put in a lot of work to make you believe that it legitimately just stole your hand, because that's a trick. That's it playing its trick on you and you believing it. And so, of course, it has to make you believe that's real. If the illusion was broken and you still had your hand, next time you lost something in a ghost illusion, you'd know better, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the point. It's all about follow through. It's a long way to go for a joke, but when you've got the rest of eternity, what better do you have?
Exactly. You enjoy it.
Exactly. All right. So, anything else, Lavix, you think we should cover?
Probably just the hypocritical nature of them.
Well, I mean,
That
You
seems
see,
to be a
Lavix,
pretty big one that I get a lot of shit for.
well, go ahead, Lavix. Go ahead. Explain it for us, and then explain the shit you're getting for it.
Well, they're both alive and dead. They affect reality, but it's not really affecting reality. They're both yes and no on a lot of things they do. And just because of, who I am and the fact that I was labeled a ghost trainer, when I do something, I could say, you shouldn't do that, but then I would go do the same thing and, just being a hypocrite. But I can justify it. As long as I can justify why, then it will work.
Kind of like running face first into a lab, right?
Kind of like walking through a waterfall.
Something a psychic type will never be capable of.
Not
Never.
necessarily true.
Oh, it's true.
How
Not necessarily
unwise.
true.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. The hypocritical nature is also something that it comes up a lot in ghost types. Is the fact that a ghost type, freezing fire, ghost types doing it's doing a lot of yes and no's, because once again, it's easy to do something and then augment the reality to seem like you're not doing it, and then augment the perception of the reality to say that you're doing it again. It's easy to switch between two options when you can control the way people are perceiving it, which is a lot like explaining why. You're controlling how they're perceiving it by explaining why you can do this and why they can't. And it's up to the person whether or not they accept that. The same way it's up to the individual who's being deceived whether or not they accept the perception of what they're seeing. The trick, if they believe it or not, which can go a long way in a ghost training. If you believe, whether you believe in a ghost or not, can be the downfall or the victory of that ghost. Of course, that being said, as my religious grandmother once said a long, long time ago, just because you don't believe in Satan don't mean he's real, baby. You got that going for you. All right, so that I feel like we've got ghost type pretty decent right now.
Yeah, that seems pretty good.
Pretty good. Let's go on to dark types. Now, dark types are a pretty big set of conflict in most of the PokeD&Ds I run. Some people hate them biasly and openly. Some people love them. Some people find them cool, but would never train them. It's a very specific set of people that really can end up having these type of Pokemon. It's because at the end of the day, the first thing you've got to understand is most dark types can come in as selfish. Now there are other typings, that can affect this. They can change between it, whether its selfish nature is outwardly spoken or its selfish nature can be put in. I mean, for example, a pure type Poochyena, they travel in as a pack, but they travel in a pack for safety. That's a selfish motive as to why they're together. So you can understand, okay, now they're selfish. Now you got to think, okay, now where does their energy come from? Where's like Dark Pulse coming from? Where's all of these type of moves that have an energy coming from? Well, like I was talking about earlier, you have the three sets of the equation which work in reality. You've got the ghost type controlling the answer, the 4 in our equation earlier. You got psychic types controlling the laws, which is the 2 plus 2 part, the plus, the minus, the times. And then you've got dark types. Now you see in that equation what a dark type controls is he's controlling the base. He's controlling the fundamentals of reality. He's controlling the numbers, something that can't be changed. Whether or not you wanted to, you're going to use numbers in that equation, and that's where dark types come in, and that's why they're effective to everything afterwards. Because whether or not you're trying to change it, whether you see 2 plus 2 is 4 or a ghost type makes you think 2 plus 2 is 6, or whether a psychic type changes the plus to a minus or changes the minus to a times, they're still working within those fundamentals, and they're still working within those basic energies of the world, in which that's where a dark type comes from, the basic fundamentals of the world. They deal with the native energies that the world starts with. That's why you can look at some dark types. Dark types can be very bestial. They can be very animal-like. Once again, I talk about a Poochyena. That's a goddamn wolf. You can't get no more basic than a damn wolf. I mean, a lot of Pokemon are like that. But you look at it and you say, okay, when does a Poochyena evolve? They're supposed to evolve once they learn Bite if you go by the anime. That's a pretty ridiculous reason for a Pokemon to evolve, but in nature that would make sense. Once it can bite and really give a bite, it evolves into a stronger thing. It has access to a newer energy, a newer slot in life. We got different dark types. I mean, look at Darkrai. We'll go with the legendary because I like Darkrai as a pure dark type because the way you can look at him and explain dark types works very well. He deals a lot with dark energies, and he himself he's the bad dream Pokemon, if I am correct. Causes nightmares, he eats them or something like that nature. I'm not terribly sure outside of what I'm getting ready to talk about. He's working at that fundamental level. You think about dreams and you think about what they are. It's your subconscious. It's that base level of you. It's that fundamental energy level, your subconscious. And he survives on that. That's what he controls. You look at a dark pulse. What is it? It's just a pulse of energy outwards. That's not really refined. It's not really anything. What it is, it's a pulse of energy led outwards. You got knockoff, pursuit, things of that nature. They're all basic fundamental attacks that can affect a Pokemon on a very basic level. Knockoff, I mean, what's it do? It knocks off. It knocks off a damn item. A pursuit hits before you can return your Pokemon, right? And so when you look at that and you go, okay, now dark types are selfish. How does that really affect dark types? And how does that affect their movesets? And how does it affect the personality of them themselves? You kind of have a little bit of a sour feeling in your stomach because all these moves are kind of like really mean moves. I mean, Pursuit's hitting a Pokemon before it's recalled. What if that Pokemon was about ready to die? Pursuit's going to kill it. What if that Pokemon was holding something that was necessary for its survival? Knockoff would kill it. It's a very harsh type of Pokemon. Their movesets are very harsh. I mean, look at Hydreigon. It's a dark dragon type, and it's just a destructive motherfucker. I mean, we'll talk about dragon types later, and you'll be able to understand a little bit more about them. That's why I have Zarayu, the local dragon trainer, come in. But that's kind of why, if you can see now with all this explanation, why a lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about dark types. And why, out of everybody here, most people just stick away from them, except for one. There's one person that actually has had quite a few dark types, and I actually had a pretty good bond with them, which is a person of interest here. Lavix had a Serenetta, which is a made-up Pokemon now. It's a made-up Pokemon by me, just like a lot of these Pokemon in my world. and it's essentially a ghost dark type. It's a opera singer. It's a lot like a banshee. They only do two things, or they only eat two things. They eat human souls or incredibly powerful dark types. Now, Lavix, knowing ghost types as well as you do, and knowing that Serenetta was a secondary dark type, like what are you thinking about that? What's your some opinions of yours?
Well, she, at least from what I've seen of her, because I didn't get much time with her, but, she did what she wanted for most of the time. If she wanted to eat, she'd go hunt someone, you know. Uh, you know, really, she just did what she wants.
Now, are there any
and there was some.
questions? I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done.
Oh, like the time that she had a dance party and killed 13 people.
An impressive feat.
I mean,
It was
music
it
makes
was
you
fun
lose
for
control.
those. Yep, it was fun for those who weren't being killed. Fun,
Good
jovial
times. Good
ghost
times.
type.
I personally
then, of
got to
course,
experience the
Murdered
killing
13
firsthand.
people.
It was not. It was not a good death.
It was suboptimal, some would say.
It was a suboptimal situation.
Yeah.
Is there any questions you guys might have about dark types that you might want answered, or some things I might have missed about dark types that you think a viewer should know?
I mean, I would personally like to accentuate the selfishness of dark types, right? But I would like to do this. I personally don't have any particularly incredible strong feelings against them. I just don't care about them per se.
Little
Now-
David is the racist we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Very.
you're talking about. Anyway, right?
Racist.
I've got a lot of
It's
dark type
Titus.
friends.
Thank you.
Racist.
But I mean, my personal favorite example of selfishness among dark types, I mean, has to also stick with my favorite dark type Pokemon, and that's Pawniard and Bisharp. Now, the way Pawniards and Bisharps work is that they run in packs, they run in groups. They've got several Pawniards led by one Bisharp. Now, there is a very light side to this, which displays the selfish nature, but there is also a very dark side. On the light side, you have all of these Pokemon working together. You've got the Bisharp teaching the Pawniard how to live its life. But then on the other side of the coin, you have the fact that if any Pawniard or any Bisharp within a community ever displays weakness as far as its dark type is concerned, it is ousted from the community and left for dead. And that best displays the selfishness of this type of Pokemon by stating that Pokemon cares so much for its own survival that it is willing to sacrifice countless others of its own species that it would normally be protecting.
That
to
reminds
secure its
me.
survival.
That works very well, because that reminds me of something that it's something that needs to be said again. Is that dark types, they're selfish, they're survivors too. That's what they do. They survive. Their abilities and their lifestyle are meant to survive, and they're meant to keep coming back. And it's not one of those of honor. It's not one of those of duty. It's, I need to survive because this is my life. Which is, if you think about it, a lot of the reasons why you could see ghost types being weak to them. That's a strong enough will to survive in the living world as a ghost type has in the dark world, or not in the dark world, but in the afterlife. Which is, I mean, why ghost types are weak to what? Ghost and dark. They're weak to things with strong wills to survive. And of course, dark types, when you're willing to do anything to survive, a psychic type can't really expect certain things. I mean, a psychic type can go about a lot of ways. He can see the future, and he can do these types of things. But when a dark type comes at you and is like, no, I'm not going to fight fair if that's what it takes to beat you, you can't really compete against that unless you're also going to not fight fair. And then you've got the ego of the psychic type coming in, where it's like they're psychic types. They can see the future. I mean, hell, look in the traditional anime when Sabrina was controlled by Alakazam. That's a pretty cocky thing for a goddamn Pokemon to do, honestly.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say, just to interject here. You're talking a lot about the motives of dark types, and how by nature they're selfish. But I think it's important to just emphasize the fact that the scaling of how their selfishness is very different from Pokemon to Pokemon, situation to environment
true.
to environment. For example, you could have, like we were talking about before, the dark types that run in packs. You know, they only do it because, you know, they're stronger as a pack. Or it could come down to something as, you know, say if it was a dark type a trainer had, like my Eevee evolved to be normal dark. It was one of Tom's custom evolutions. I mean, you know, you could say that the only reason it stayed with myself or the party was because, you know, something like, oh, well, I mean, he's an alright guy and I kind of enjoy his company. That could be as much as the selfishness, you know, could actually go to. That could be the
True.
only extent of it. And it's just important to emphasize that it's very different from Pokemon to Pokemon, I feel.
Yeah, like my Pokemon from one of his campaigns also was a bug dark type. I'm pretty sure the main reason it was wanted to be selfish in a sense was just to make sure I would just stay alive, as it wanted to serve me.
Also,
Yeah.
dark types have a pretty good root in some criminal organizations as well.
True. I mean, if you do what it takes to survive, and that's crime,
Yep.
you do crime. And
So
it
then-
would make sense why a lot of criminals would have dark types in that scenario. Why you'd see a lot of those type of Pokemon popping up.
So then, why are dark types weak against fighting and bug types?
Well, because it's actually a pretty funny ordeal. Doesn't matter how strong your will to survive is. If somebody who can break a piece of and who can split a boulder in half by punching it. If a Machamp comes at you with like his forearms, right? And he's going to hit you. It doesn't matter how devious or how much will or what your will to survive is. If he's going to punch you, he's going to punch you, and it's going to break you.
I mean, it
Yeah.
also doesn't really matter that you're able to change the variables of the equation when you're about to be brick broken as a Pokemon.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
feel-
it's a lot of the thing of brawn outweighing brains in the situation.
Also, I
And
think
then you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on the fighting types, but I will say one thing is, you know, we're talking about how dark types you know, they're all about survival and such. Just to speak on the bug side of things, because you're asking about, you know, both their weaknesses. Imagine, you know, you're a survivor, you're out there, you're like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to survive, hurdy, her. Imagine if, you know, you saw, you know, Pokemon, they're just like, yeah, I'm going to go and die for, you know, the Queen or whoever I'm serving at the time, you know? It's kind of a little bit of a system shock in that regard, I'd feel, for a dark Pokemon.
I'd agree. That's a pretty good synopsis of the weakness to bug from dark types. You know, I mean, they're wanting to survive, and they have the will to survive, and they're gonna try to survive. And then you face something that's willing to throw 10 to 15 of its own people at you to kill you. I mean, you've got a beehive willing to die for its queen. It's a lot of lives. That's a lot of suicide bombers, essentially. And you can't fight that type of crazy odds. Can't do it. Can't overpower a giant beehive. And that's just the truth of it. At least not when you're fighting as a dark type.
On your own.
On your own. Which is, of course, the selfish nature. I mean, then you've got, you know, you can look at it and you got your types, like I said, with Tapuchi, you know, they were traveling in a pack, but they travel in a pack and they travel in a forest. It makes sense now that's how they would try to they'd have to try to protect themselves from the weakness. If they're in a forest from bug types, we can't beat them alone. We'll work as a group to protect ourselves from the bug types, because you don't really run into that many just fighting types running around in a forest most of the time. And even that being said, a dark type can just avoid fights too. I mean, like I said, these are wild Pokemon we're talking about in this scenario. Even if whether with a trainer, you can still see the same things occurring in those type of situations. Looking at flinching and things, nature being in a lot of dark type moves. Well, I feel we covered dark type pretty well. You guys agree?
Yeah, they definitely got a
Yes.
lot more time than everything
Psychic.
else.
Or
Yeah.
Ghost.
Well, I
Or
had to
combined.
explain it. There's just a lot of weirdness people
And
have.
For the three that we're discussing, I definitely feel dark types have the most depth from the other out of the free typing entirely, just because
Most definitely.
of what they are. You know?
True. Some things are shallow by nature, and some things are deep by nature. It's just kind of the truth of the world and the truth of personalities. Now, with that being said, let's go on to our fourth and final typing here. And thank God we have Jordan here because he's a horrible human being and he lied earlier. He's actually the only person in a Poke D&D to date who is a pure normal type trainer. Now, when I say that, you of course would have heard this in an earlier episode about the way typings work in people, but he is both primary and secondary typing normal, pure typing through and through, tertiary typing electric. He's about as normal as you can goddamn get. He's also Irish, which makes him a drunkard, but that's not here or there. Jordan,
Yes.
about normal types. Now, I'm going to give a brief synopsis about them, just brief, because since you're here, we're going to have a nice discussion about them. Normal types are probably one of the most utilized and then underutilized, valued and undervalued Pokemon really you can find in the game world and in the Poke D&D world too. They have a huge move pool. They were talking about normal types being able to learn a crazy amount of moves through TMs, through breeding, through move tutors. You could see learning a wider range of things, and you ask yourself, well, why is that? You ask yourself, okay, why are they immune to ghost types? Why do they have these very specific things about them? And my answer, and what I've seen doing a ungodly amount of research into Pokemon as a whole, is that there's one common thing among all normal types, and that's the fact that they're internalized. Now, I don't mean that in the selfish sense of a normal, or not a normal type, but a dark type. I mean that as in a confidence. You can actually see a lot of confidence in these normal type Pokemon. I mean, hell, it sounds stupid, but look at the Rattata. It's pretty. Everybody can understand that's a pretty shitty Pokemon. Most people hate it. I'm sure you got your Hyper Fang thing and bullshit, and people beating Elite Fours with it. But it's a
Go
pretty
Eradicate.
god awful Pokemon. I know. Eradicate. Same. It's evolution. So
I like them.
I bet you.
He's a rat
One
cat.
one thing I will say, just to throw in here, you with the Everfree types brought up a certain example. You
The
were
equation?
talking about the equation now. Fun fact, we're talking about how psychics can change variables, how the ghost types can make the equation whatever they want. Well, the fun fact about normal types, being that they are centralized and they are more about themselves, is that if you were to put them in this example, they're the person writing the equation. They stand outside of what's on the paper, basically.
That's probably the most beautiful example you could have put on it, and it's completely correct. Normal types are apart from this; they're outside of the equation, and that's why why they're immune to the ghost types. If you look at it in that way, they're writing it, and if they do the math themselves, they'll get the right answer. And so it doesn't matter what the ghost type tries to convince them the answer is; they're gonna get the right answer because they've done the problem themselves. And so you can look at it within that example as to, okay, this is how that works into the example. Now, in a more relevant way in Poke D&D, you look at it as, in this sense, normal types internalize themselves, and they internalize themselves in a sense of energy. Look at a Hyper Beam. That is literally their physical energy, the kinetic energy within their body, internalized, focused, harnessed, and then shot out of something. No, most of the time it's a mouth, but the only reason I say something is because if it's an opening, I imagine a normal type can shoot from it. And that's
If
all
they
I'll
try
say
hard
about it.
enough.
If they try hard enough. I mean, we've yet to see a fart hyper beam, but
Is that
I
a
imagine.
challenge? Is that a challenge? Oh my god.
God damn it! Please to Jesus, make your EV fart a hyper beam. That's all I'm
I
asking
will.
in my
It's gonna
life.
happen.
All right. So you look at that, okay, that's where their energy is coming from. And when you draw your energy from yourself and within yourself, it's a lot easier to do a lot of crazy things, especially when it's the controlling of kinetic energy. So you got normal types using fire moves, kinetic once again. You got the way fire works, the heating up of molecules, that can be done with kinetic energy. Flamethrower, lightning bolt, same thing. Water, it can be a bit iffy and difficult, which is where a lot of the rules of Poke D&D come into. But through things that would have been have already been explained, you can see how they can use water type moves and things of that nature. Now, with normal types, a big precipice of them is confidence. If a normal type doesn't have confidence in their own ability, how can they do something? I mean, you look at certain abilities that normal types have, and that originates in them, and then moves on, to some of the other typings, in different amounts and different quantities. One of the most being, and I think the biggest one being adaptability.
Oh yeah, that build is great.
Exactly. I personally believe adaptability is probably one of the better examples of a normal type move, because what does it shows? It shows the ability for a normal type to be adaptive. I mean, look at an Eevee. An Eevee is the most adaptive Pokemon on Earth, and what is it known for? It's evolutions. It can evolve into what? How many evolutions is it now these days? It's like
Like 9?
9?
Like
7 or
8,000?
9.
It might as well. I mean, with my PokeDD, it's fucking huge, but that's not even the point. Like,
8.
traditionally, it's 8.
It was like
So 9.
5,900 and something documented evolutions for EVs.
God, it's huge. Well, with that being said, you look at it and you go, well, that's highly adaptive. I mean, that's an Eevee for every situation you will ever encounter, at least in the game, enough to the point. I mean, sure, they'll come out with it. Sure, we're just waiting on Gen 6 for a Dragon type Eevee to pop out.
Dumpyon!
Dragion.
I wish.
Dragion.
Freezion or
Dragion? God, that sounds terrible.
Flappyon.
I'll make it happen.
Oh, God bless it. So you look at that and you go, okay, Eevee's, it's most stereotypical normal Pokemon. You think of it's highly adaptive. Of course, it's also a genetically modified Pokemon. Well, okay, let's go off of that then. Let's leave the normal type Eevee. Let's go look at another type of normal Pokemon. What type of Pokemon do you see across every continent, in every game, in every situation you go into a Pokemon Center? There is always
Bidoof. A Bouffalant.
It's a
That's
You're
normal.
right. It's a Bouffalant.
Buffalon.
Nah, it's goddamn Chanseys and Blissies and Autonos. You're looking at normal types once again, adaptive. They adapted not only just to be Pokemon, but they're nurses. And only a Pokemon, and anybody who can speak truthfully about confidence knows that you couldn't be a Pokemon and be a nurse without some amount of confidence in yourself. Especially to have enough confidence in yourself and confidence in your trainer to be able to be like, all right, Pokemon's lives are in my hands. Let's heal some motherfuckers.
Yeah, I mean, they're just reaffirm on the confidence, as to what we're talking about here, and to just harken back to the games and, Normal's immunity to ghost types. I think it's important to say, just to throw it out there to be like, a ghost, as we were discussing before, has the ability to change, reality into what it wants to see. And, a ghost can fire something, like, say a normal type. And as long as that normal type has the confidence to just be like, yeah, it's actually not going to do anything to me. Yeah, go ahead. Hit me with it. I'm alright with that, because it's actually really not going to actually do anything, is it? Yeah, it's not, no.
But then,
There you go. And then it gets hit by the ghost type move, and it's like, oh, look at that, didn't do anything.
but then you
It's
do
not-
also have the other side of that, where a ghost type can look at a normal type and just not be affected by it. It's almost
Yeah.
as though normal types are so grounded in reality and ghost types are so far from reality that neither of them can affect the other.
Almost definitely.
It's true. It's like a difference in planes. A ghost type's on a different plane than a normal type, and so the two just can't interact, at least with their original typings.
Yeah,
Unless
definitely.
Odor Sleuth is used in a Pokemon battle.
Of course, unless we're talking about Pokemon battles, and then you Odor Sleuth or you have a Focus Ring, or I don't even know.
Or I
It's
can
been so
get
long
an
since.
Eevee to fart a flamethrower.
Mm-hmm. As you do.
As you do.
Or I get a Ghastly to punch you in the face.
I mean, as you do. As you do.
I'm gonna punch that Ghastly in the face!
Oh, God. All right, so Jordan, you think there's any more about normal types that should be talked about, or are you pretty confident with that kind of explanation?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we've definitely covered a lot of bases. One thing I will say that I don't think has been brought up is every normal type Pokemon's ability to have some sort of analysis of what's going on around them. Not just analysis as in, the fact of there's a tree over there, or hey look, something in that bush is rustling. I mean on, a little bit more of a just as a battle tactic, It's definitely something that should be mentioned, I feel.
I'd agree with it. That is something that, as a battle tactic. I'll start from where you can see it in Pokemon. I'll start with the anime, and we'll work our way into the into the Pokemon D&D. All right, so once again, because it's the perfect example that everybody can get behind. We'll start with an Audino or Chansey or a Blissey. Once again, it's going to take confidence to do that job, but what other type of thing is it going to take for them to do that job? Once again, they're a nurse. It has to be analysis. They have to be able to look at the Pokemon, analyze what's going on, analyze the condition of the trainer. They have to be ready to handle a lot of different stimuli, and they have to adapt to that situation. That's what nurses do every day of their lives. And so you say, okay, there's the example in the anime. I can see that. I can understand, okay, this Pokemon has to be analyzing the situation in order for them to do their job. You go out and you say, okay, how is that used in a combative sense? How is that worked and things of that nature? Now, you go ahead and you look at Pokemon of that nature, right? We'll go, what's a random normal type? Go from here.
Bidoof.
God,
Bidoof. Always Bidoof.
I'm never using Bidoof. I hate that Pokemon so much. I don't even know why, and I
We
just
require
don't like
more Bidoof.
You require more Bidoofs. All right.
I mean, normal
So-
types do make very good HM horse.
That's
Well, I
all
mean
very
that can be an example of them being adaptive, but I wouldn't give them any more than that. So, if I'm right, I believe there's a move. You got Tactician or maybe Analyze or something of that nature. It's a move. It's an ability by normal types. I can't quite pull it out, but I'm sure somebody will tell me here in a second. Yeah, there's my boys. All right, so you look at it and go, okay, what does that move do? What it analyzes the situation. Oh my God, Kecleon. That's what I was wanting to talk about. Oh God, starts off as a normal type. It just hit me all of a sudden. Starts off as a normal type. It's got the ability, I think it's color change.
Yeah.
It literally analyzes the situation and then adapts to it. It analyzes the situation and then adapts to it. It analyzes the attack, adapts to it. Analyzes the situation, adapts to it. It's the perfect example of a normal type ability. That type of analysis that I was talking about earlier being moved into a Pokemon. All right. Now, I mean, I can't give you any more. That's a pretty decent. What's it? Castform, I believe, is a good one too. Castform starts off as a normal type. Castforms analyze the situation and they adapt to it. They analyze the situation and then they adapt to it. I mean, you look at it and say those two seem like they're pretty interconnected. That's the truth. It's a very interconnected relationship that these normal types have. You can't adapt to something if you don't analyze the situation, if you can't analyze it on the fly, because that's what these types are doing. We're not talking about a Zoroark who's coming out already in an illusion. We're talking about a Pokemon mid-fight, seeing what's happening and changing to fit the situation. I feel like I got that one pretty decently covered too, honestly.
That's solved. Yeah, no, apart from that, and probably just a last note on normal type Pokemon. One thing that I personally have found, doing a few of your D&Ds, Tom, is that one of the most important things you can have whilst training or having a normal Pokemon is the ability to communicate with it. Not just in the fact that, say a ghost type can be like, oh, mind, emotions, take them, know what I'm talking about.
Not the mind,
Like,
it's
anyway.
the soul.
It's the
Yeah, alright.
spirit, boy.
Look, the point still stands. In the normal classes, Tom, one of literally the intermediate class was how do I better communicate with my Pokemon? What is it that my Pokemon gets or that I don't get about when my Pokemon is trying to communicate something to me? It's incredibly important for a normal type, I feel, and because if you as a trainer are going to provide the confidence that they need, you need to be able to convey to them what you're feeling or what you're saying, because a normal type isn't always going to understand you. A Ratatat's a rat at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, of course.
And just as I say that, I mean, they have to understand you and you have to understand them, so there has to be some sense of dialogue for a normal type to work at their, best possible capacity.
Right. Now, I once again, that's why I wanted you to be here. If there's anybody who could really understand a typing through and through, it's somebody who harbors that pure typing. So, I feel like we're pretty good on normal types at that point. If anybody has anything extra they'd like to add, say now. Forever hold your Eevee.
More questions, and I'm always holding my Eevee.
Yep. Always holding your Eevee, I assume. Any questions you guys have on them? I'll once.
I would
Nope,
just like
I'm
to
pretty
say,
good.
for the record, normal types have the most fantastic hairstyles because Bouffalon is a normal type.
Have you seen my
God.
Eevees ourselves?
God bless America.
Paloma
little
for
baby.
days. Paloma for
Gen
days.
six.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think that's pretty good. We covered the 3 meta types, which is why that's how we refer to Ghost, Psychic, and Dark, the 3 meta types. So we covered normal type, which pretty intricately connected to those.
Rank in the meta type.
I've been here with Kitsune,
Hello.
Little David,
Wait.
Bye.
Zarayu,
Have a good one.
Lavix,
Stop.
and Jordan.
How's it going? Thanks for watching.
Oh, and of course Vilty.
Hi.
God,
You just have
God, I
like
don't know
6
why.
words.
you've
know.
been consistently making me angrier and angrier as we do these. I don't know why.
Vilde
I'm-
has a very special ability.
It's called annoyance.
Just
It's called Annoy Tom.
It's a passive aura. Just annoys
I can
everyone.
annoy people with saying as little words as possible. Or doing
God
very
bless
little
it.
in
That's what you
general.
get. That's what you get. Well,
That's it.
at that point then, until next time, and I've been your DM and host Tom. Thanks for watching and have a good one.